insane. He's a young dad. He's a husband. He's an entrepreneur. He is somebody who I realized when I saw back in March at events before I signed on, I had never seen a Democrat that could get people that voted for Donald Trump like this guy could. And there was a guy in the audience with a MAGA shirt on. And I said, you just attended an event with a 44-year-old Asian man who wants to give every American $1,000 a month, no questions asked. Sir, are you at the correct event? He said, yes, I am. And I asked him why. He said, it turns out that Donald Trump, after 2.5 years, this was a 2016 Trump voter, after 2.5 years, he realized that Donald Trump was the wrong answer to the right question. And he says that Andrew Yang is the right answer to the right question. So, he said, what the hell's the right question? And he said, here it is. At a time with record low unemployment and record low inflation, record high stock prices, record high GDP, how come despite all these numbers that we have been told during our entire adult lives, we have been told that an Econ 101 class means that you should enjoy broad prosperity, better prosperity than your parents had, and prosperity that guarantees your children will be better off than you. And unfortunately, that is not the reality of the American economy today. He said for 70 to 90% of the American people, they're walking an economic tightrope with no net underneath. Well, it is time for big change, transformational change. It requires a transformational president. That transformational president, after 2 minutes of stalling, is now in the room. And he is ready to be the next president. Ladies and gentlemen, Andrew Yang.
Hello, New Hampshire. How are you? Oh, look at this group. I am so excited to be here with you all tonight. Thank you all for coming. One question I've been asking groups, how many of you have never heard me speak before? I'm going to guess most of you, right? TV. How many of you saw one of the expensive TV ads that we bought? That's good. We won't have to fire anyone there. That's good. Also want to thank again Steve Marchand. Let's give him a round of applause. He and Christina are among the two early champions here in New Hampshire that saw the energy and potential for this campaign, and we are now taking off. We're growing like mad. I don't know how many of you saw that our fundraising total this quarter was 65% higher than the last quarter. And those zero corporate PAC money, all grassroots, people-powered donations. Our average donation has only been $30, so our fans are almost as cheap as Bernie's. But there are many of them, and we are poised to make history together. How many of you know I went to high school here in the state? Yeah. I went to Phillips Exeter Academy and graduated in 1992. They invited me to speak at Exeter about 6 months ago. I went back to speak, and I told them it was my first time back because I did not enjoy my time there. And then the student body erupted in applause. I was like, oh my gosh. I didn't know that was the reaction I was going to get. After I graduated from Exeter, I went to college in Rhode Island, not far from here, at Brown, and then I became an unhappy lawyer in New York City for 5 months. I left after 5 months to start a company that did not work out. How many of you have started a business or organization or a mailing list or club? So if you have your hand up, you know two things. Number one, it's much harder than anyone lets on. And number two, when someone asks you how it's going, what do you say? Great. My business went great until it failed. My parents told people I was still a lawyer because they're Asian. But I'd been bitten by the bug and wanted to get better, so I joined another small company and then another, and then I became the CEO of an education company that grew to become #1 in the US and was bought by a bigger company in 2009. Now, 2009 was a very tough time in much of the country. How many of you were here in New Hampshire 10 years ago in 2009? How was the financial crisis in this part of the state?
Great.
Yeah, by great, I think you mean the opposite of great. It's true. When I was in Derry, I asked the same question, and a 14-year-old boy had his hand up and said it was really bad. And then I said, you must have been 4 years old at the time. How do you remember? And he said, well, we had to sell our house, so I remember. And I was like, oh my gosh, you really would remember that. It was a very tough time in so much of the country, and I thought I had some insight as to why our economy had tanked. It was because so many of the wannabe whiz kids I'd gone to Exeter and Brown and Columbia with had gone straight to Wall Street and come up with mortgage-backed securities and financial derivatives and these exotic financial instruments that ended up blowing up the economy. And I thought, well, that's a disaster, that's a train wreck. We should have people doing the opposite of that. And so I thought, well, what's the opposite of just moving numbers around and tanking the economy? And to me, the opposite was starting businesses and creating jobs in places like Detroit, Cleveland, Providence, Baltimore, Birmingham. So I quit my job. How many of you all have worked at nonprofits or work in a nonprofit now? How many of you volunteer for a nonprofit? You should really just raise your hand to that one, because that's like, am I a good person kind of question. You're like, yeah, of course I volunteer for a nonprofit. So I quit my job to start a nonprofit, and I give full credit to my wife because I was a pretty normal guy when we met and got together. And so when I was like, hey, I'm gonna quit my job and start a nonprofit. We're gonna create thousands of jobs around the country. She was a really good sport about it. Let me do it. So to start a nonprofit, there are different ways to do it, but what I did is I put up some money and then I started calling rich friends with this question. Do you love America? Then the smart among them said, what does it mean if I say yes to this question? And I said, at least $10,000. And I got 12 people to say, I love America for $10,000, so raised a couple $100,000, that grew to the millions, helped create several thousand jobs in 15 cities around the country. And what we did is we recruited enterprising young people who wanted to learn how to build businesses and sent them to work at growth companies in Detroit, Cleveland, Baltimore, New Orleans, helped those businesses grow, and then if they wanted to start their own business, we gave them some seed investment and mentorship to help them on their way. Because that was the way I developed as an entrepreneur. I worked with more seasoned entrepreneurs as their lieutenant, and that's how I got better. So I wanted to do the same thing for young people around the country. Spent 7 years doing that work, created thousands of jobs, and was honored by the Obama administration multiple times. So I got to bring my wife to meet the president. My in-laws were really excited about me that week. They were like, she did all right, look at these pictures. But unfortunately, during the 7 years I ran Venture for America, I had this sinking feeling that many of the places I went seemed to be getting worse, not better. How many of you grew up here in New England? Midwest? South? West Coast? So I had never been to Missouri, Alabama, Louisiana, Ohio, Michigan before running Venture for America. And I saw the aftermath of the loss of manufacturing jobs in many of these communities. And I felt like when you were flying between Michigan and Manhattan, or St. Louis and San Francisco, you were crossing dimensions or decades or ways of life and not just a few time zones, because the gulf between regions was so vast. But I was still stunned when Donald Trump became our president in 2016. You remember that night? Well, I'm sure you're nodding, miss. How did you react when Donald Trump won? Tears? Nausea? Screaming? Had to contact the helpline, like needed therapy. To me, this was a giant red flag that tens of millions of our fellow Americans decided to take a bet on the narcissist reality TV star as our president. And though you might have reacted with nausea or tears, many of us, all of us, I would suggest, have family members, friends, and neighbors that were excited about his victory. Now, if you were to turn on cable news networks today, why would you think that Donald Trump's our president? Why do you think he won, according to the cable news networks? Racism, Russia, misogyny, ignorance of the voters, maybe.
He's a couple decades behind.
Backward, Hillary Clinton, media somehow, fake news. Yeah, there is that, it's true. So you see this set of reasons, Russia, racism, immigration, all mixed together into a cocktail, and this is why he's our president. But I'm a numbers guy, and I went looking through the numbers for an explanation. And I found it, that we'd automated away 4 million manufacturing jobs over the last number of years. And where were those jobs? Ohio, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Iowa, Missouri, all the swing states that Donald Trump needed to win and did win, if that list of states sounds familiar. This happened right here in New Hampshire a little bit earlier on. You all lost more than 12,000 manufacturing jobs, mostly in the northern part of the state. And those towns have never recovered. I've been to those towns. After the plant closed, the shopping district closed, people started to leave, the school shrank, and now the people in the town are managing the decline. The same story played out in Michigan, Ohio, Missouri, and unfortunately, what happened to the manufacturing jobs is now shifting to other parts of the economy. How many of you have noticed stores closing around where you live here in New Hampshire? And why are those stores closing? Amazon, that's right. Amazon's soaking up $20 billion in business every single year, closing 30% of our stores and malls. Most common job in our communities is retail clerk. Average retail clerk's a 39-year-old woman making between $9 and $10 an hour. When her store closes, what is her next job? How much did Amazon pay in federal taxes last year? Zero. That is your math, New Hampshire. 20 billion out, zero back. 30% of your stores and malls close for good. Most common job disappears.
$7.25 an hour in New Hampshire.
$7.25 in New Hampshire. We really need to get that a bit higher. I mean, you can't be working full time making $7.25 and live on that, am I right? And it's not just the retail jobs. When you all call the customer service line of a big company and you get the software bot, you probably do the same thing I do, which is you pound 000, say human, representative, until you get someone on the line, right? Raise your hand if that's what you do. Yeah, we all do that, because that software is miserable. But in 2 or 3 short years, the software is going to sound like this. Hey Andrew, how's it going? What can I do for you? It'll be fast, seamless, delightful. You might not even know it's software. What is that going to mean for the 2.5 million Americans who work in call centers right now, making $10 to $14 an hour? How many of you have seen a self-serve kiosk in a fast food restaurant, like a McDonald's or one of those chains? Every location in the country by next year. And then they're going to start shifting to the back of the house, the robot burger flippers and fry cookers. It's not just the CVS's and the grocery stores. And the rubber's really going to hit the road when the robot trucks hit the highways. How many of you know a truck driver here in New Hampshire? It's the most common job in 29 states. There are 3.5 million truckers in this country, and the robot trucks are coming closer to the highways every week. A robot truck just took 20 tons of butter from California to Pennsylvania 2 weeks ago without human intervention. Why did they choose butter? I have no idea. But if you Google robot butter truck, you can see the story. What is this going to mean for the 3.5 million truckers or the 7 million Americans who work in truck stops, motels, and diners that rely upon the truckers getting out and having a meal every day? We're in the midst of the greatest economic transformation in the history of our country, what experts are calling the 4th Industrial Revolution. When's the last time you heard a politician say the words 4th Industrial Revolution?
Right now.
Yeah, 2 seconds ago. In New Hampshire, I'm barely a politician. So these were the numbers I was digging through in 2017. Trump wins, I say, oh my gosh, I'm being celebrated for creating jobs and the water's just rushing out of the bathtub. Let me dig into what this looks like. I'm friends with the technologists who are working on the self-driving trucks and the AI and the rest of it. And I still said, let me go to Washington, D.C. and ask them this question. What are we going to do to help our people manage this transition? What do you think the folks in D.C. said to me when I said, what are we going to do to help?
What's an AI?
Oh, the 3 big responses I got were, 1, we cannot talk about this. 2, we should study this further. And 3, we must educate and retrain all Americans for the jobs of the future. How many of you have heard a politician say something like that? So when someone said that to me in DC, I said, that sounds great, but I looked at the numbers. Do you all want to guess how effective government-funded retraining programs were for manufacturing workers who lost their jobs?
0 to 15.
Very low, 0 to 15%. They're a total failure. And when I said this to the folks in DC, they said, well, I guess we'll get better at it then. And one person in DC said something that brought me here to you all tonight, New Hampshire. He said, Andrew, you're in the wrong town. No one here is going to do anything about this because fundamentally, this is a town of followers, not leaders. And the only way we will do something about it is if you were to create a wave in other parts of the country and bring that wave crashing down on our heads. And I said, challenge accepted. I'll be back in 2 years. And New Hampshire, you all are the wave. You all are among the most powerful people in our country today. I know it does not feel like it because you're just living your lives, but I'm going to give you one data point. Raise your hand and with each finger, tell me how many presidential candidates you've seen this cycle. So this would be 6, this would be 4, be 10, and then 4, 9, not enough hands, I'm over it. Looks like she's over 10. I like the ones because it makes me feel like you just came out for me, so that makes me feel really good. So I appreciate the heck out of that. 10 plus. The reason why we are all coming to you is because you all have outsized power in our country. I did the math. Do you know how many Californians each of you is worth? 1,000 Californians apiece. So look around this room tonight. What's the fire code in this room? I don't want to get anyone in trouble. I'm going to give a Trumpian estimate. There are 800 people in this room. Let's say there are 140 people in this room. That's still almost 4 football stadiums full of Californians. That is the power in this room tonight. It's the power to do something that other Americans only dream about doing. Other Americans look up at our government and they see the pipes clogged with money, all the lobbyist cash just jammed in there, and they're like, hey, I can do nothing about the pipes and the money and the clog. But you all can. You can flush the pipes clean just like that. That is the power in this room. That is the power in your hands. And to use that power to take a new vision to the rest of the country, we have to let the rest of the country know that we have to rewrite the rules of the 21st century economy to work for us, to work for you, to work for your kids, because they are not working now. Now, I talked about how Amazon, this trillion-dollar tech company, is paying 0 in taxes. That, I'm going to suggest, is something that's not their fault. That is our fault as a country. You know what I mean? It's a company's goal to pay as little in taxes as possible. We have to be pretty dumb to let them get away with it. Am I right, New Hampshire? So believe it or not, you didn't know this. You're here tonight to help make sure Amazon pays its fair share in taxes. And then the question is, oh, you like that? And then the second part of it, which is just as important, is what we do with that value when it's in our hands. If you're here tonight, you heard at some point there's someone running for president who wants to give everyone $1,000 a month. And the first time you heard that, raise your hand first if you heard that, because you know that's like my flagship proposal. Wow, some of you know? That's fantastic. Well, now you know. My flagship proposal is that every American gets $1,000 a month from age 18 until the day you expire. Now that sounds awfully dramatic. That sounds almost too good to be true. But this is not my idea and it's not a new idea. Thomas Paine was for it at the founding of the country, called it the Citizen's Dividend, said every American should get a dividend on our birthright. Martin Luther King, whose son I had the privilege of meeting with in Atlanta, was fighting for this in the 60s, and it is what he was fighting for when he was killed in 1968, a guaranteed minimum income for all Americans. 1,000 economists, including Milton Friedman, the patron saint of libertarianism, endorsed this in the 60s, and it was so mainstream it passed the US House of Representatives twice in 1971 under Nixon, the Family Assistance Plan. And then 11 years later, one state actually passed a dividend where now everyone in that state gets between $1,000 and $2,000 a year, no questions asked. And what state is that? Alaska. And how do they pay for it? Oil. And what is the oil of the 21st century? Data, software, AI, self-driving cars and trucks, technology. A study just came out that said that our data is now worth more than oil. How many of you saw that study? How many of you got your data check in the mail last month? Oh, we joke, but if our data is now worth tens of billions of dollars, who's getting the data checks? Facebook, Amazon, Google, and the trillion-dollar tech companies that are paying 0 or near 0 in taxes. Do you see the game, New Hampshire? Stores are closing, we're getting sucked dry, and we're looking at each other being like, where's the value going? Where's the money going? And then you have these trillion-dollar tech companies literally paying 0 back into the system. So if we get our fair share of every Amazon sale, every Google search, every Facebook ad, eventually every robot truck mile and AI work unit, we can easily pay for a dividend of $1,000 a month for everyone here tonight, everyone in the state, everyone around the country. Particularly because after the dividend is in your hands, how would you spend it? What would you do with an extra $1,000 a month? Where would it go? Supermarket, mortgage, vacation, that's cool. Student debt, loans. I'm sorry college has gotten 2.5 times more expensive since I went to school. It has not gotten 2.5 times better. We need to fix that. How much of the money would stay right here in New Hampshire? Most of it, not all of it. You might get your own Netflix password, like some of it would float up. But most of it would stay right here in New Hampshire. It would go to local businesses, car repairs you've been putting off, daycare expenses, Little League signups, local nonprofits, religious organizations. New Hampshire, this is the trickle-up economy. From our people, our families, and our communities up. This would make us stronger, healthier, mentally healthier, less stressed out. It would help us all manage the greatest economic transformation in the history of our country, and would make us all shareholders and beneficiaries of this innovation economy that right now is profiting from our data without us seeing a dime. So this is how we rewrite the rules and make it so that this economy works for us. And raise your hand if you're a parent. If you're a parent like I am, I've got 2 young boys, then you have these sinking feelings about the country we are leaving our kids. And I'm a numbers guy. The truth is that our feelings are correct. If you were born in the 1940s in this country, first, congratulations, because that's pretty good already. A lot of you are in your 70s and having a good run. But if you were born in the 1940s in this country, there was a 93% chance you're going to be better off than your parents. That's the American dream. That's what brought my family here. If you were born in the 1990s, which is some of you, you're down to a 50-50 shot and it's declining quickly. That is why Trump won. That is what you all have to change. We have to make it so that it's still working for our kids. And if you're a young person and you feel like we've left you a mess, I apologize, because we have. And we need your help to clean it up as fast as possible. And it's not just student loan debt or climate change or a dysfunctional government. It's the fact that we need to put you in position to succeed and move forward, start family, buy homes, start businesses, get out of debt, all of those things. We have to put you in position to have the same kind of future that we'd want for ourselves. Now, this is all in your power, New Hampshire. That's the beauty of being here tonight. Right now, the rest of our country, all of us really, are being beaten over the head with messages about how great things are going. You know, like you're hearing like stock market, record highs, GDP, record highs, unemployment, record lows. And again, you have this sinking feeling. You're like, for some reason, things do not seem like they're going that great in my life or my family's life or my community's life. And again, you are right. Record highs of corporate profits, yes, but also record highs in this country right now. Stress, mental illness, suicides, drug overdoses, indebtedness. It's gotten so bad that our life expectancy has declined for 3 years in a row. You know the last time America's life expectancy declined for 3 years in a row? The Spanish flu of 1918, a global pandemic that killed millions. There's some Yang Gang here. They kind of know. It is not normal in a developed country for your life expectancy to decline ever. Ordinarily, it just keeps going up because you're getting richer, stronger, healthier. But in the United States of America, it went down and then down and then down again. And why? Because suicides and drug overdoses each overtook vehicle deaths as leading causes of death in this country. And I know here in New Hampshire, you have suffered deeply and personally from the opiate epidemic, because this is one of the epicenters of a plague that was allowed by our government. It was a plague initiated by drug companies that realized they could profit off of us, and our government did nothing to stop it. So these measurements have us heading in the wrong direction. If you have GDP going up and your life expectancy going down, which do you listen to? To me, that's very, very obvious. You listen to us. And I know directly how bad the measurements are because my wife is at home with our 2 boys every day, one of whom is autistic. How much does her work get valued at in our economic measurements? 0. Not just her, every stay-at-home parent, nurturers, caregivers, people caring for loved ones, also volunteers, mentors, coaches, artists most all of the time, increasingly journalists, Over 2,000 local papers have gone out of business in this country because all the classifieds just went up to Craigslist. The things that we claim to value most dearly are getting zeroed out progressively in our society. And we have been brainwashed to think that economic value and human value are the same things, and they are not, New Hampshire. The market does not know how much we're worth. We know how much we're worth. You know how much we're worth, and our kids are worth. This is what rewriting the rules is all about. To say we all have intrinsic value as human beings and Americans, and it doesn't matter what the market is saying at any given moment. So this is the vision that we have to take to the rest of the country as quickly as possible. I will redefine the economic measurements themselves. Instead of GDP, which is 100 years old, and even its inventor said this is a terrible measurement of national well-being and we should never use it as that. Think about that. He said that 100 years ago, and then here we are just following it, being like, oh. Yeah. Robot trucks will be great for GDP. They're going to be terrible for a lot of humans. So instead of GDP and corporate profits, how should we be measuring our progress? Our wellness and life expectancy, our mental health and freedom from substance abuse. How about number of Americans who can retire with dignity and quality circumstances? How about clean air and clean water? How about how our kids are doing? These will be the measurements of our society under my administration, and I will report them to you every year at the State of the Union. I'll use a PowerPoint deck in the whole thing and say, here it is. So this is the vision that you can make real just like that, New Hampshire. That's why I love being here so much. In most of the country, you have a conversation like this and people go home thinking, that sounds great, but I can't do much about it. And again, they are right. They do not have the power that you have. You have to be the wave that humanizes this economy for the rest of the country, for our children, so we can look our kids in the eyes and actually say, we did everything we could to leave you a country we are still proud of. We fought for it, and we made it happen. But it will not happen without you all making that case to the rest of the country in 40 short days. Donald Trump's our president today because he had a very simple message. He said he was going to make America great again. What did Hillary Clinton say in response? America's already great. You remember that? Yeah. It has been a long several years, I know. It's about to end. That response was not the right response. We need to acknowledge the depth and severity and reality of the problems in our communities because they are real. But then we need actual solutions. What were Donald Trump's solutions? Build a wall, turn the clock back, bring the old jobs back. New Hampshire, we have to do the opposite of these things. We have to turn the clock forward. We have to accelerate our economy and society to rise to the real challenges of the 21st century. And we need to evolve in the way we think about ourselves and our work and our value. I am the ideal candidate for this job because the opposite of Donald Trump is an Asian man who likes math. Thank you very much. Thank you, New Hampshire. Thank you, Rochester. You may not know this, but math is an acronym, and what does it stand for? Make America think harder. That's right, New Hampshire. That is your job. It is your job to take this country not left, not right, but forward in 2020, and I know you'll do just that. Let's make history. Thank you all. Let's fight for it. And I think we're going to take some questions, which makes me very happy, because I love questions. Do we have a mic runner, or do we have someone who's going to do it, or am I just going to tap people, which is all to the good? All right, just give it a shout. Go ahead. I'll actually come down to you and give you the mic.
Oh, I didn't know.
You might have to, yeah.
I just wanted to know how one New Hampshire voter is equal to 8,000 California.
Well, 1,000.
Oh, 1,000, okay.
Sure. So if you look at the population ratio, it's approximately 30 to 1. But then you also have to put in another factor for the timing, because when you vote in New Hampshire, it ends up amplifying that campaign for weeks and weeks before California ever votes. So if you figure 30 for the population, then another 33 or so for the timing, you wind up with 1,000.
Math.
Math. No problem. I mean, I love the fact that I actually got asked that question. It makes me very happy. Sir. Yeah, go ahead, shout it out. I can't get to the mic. Yes, you. No. Yeah, there we go.
I love the fact that you're reframing the conception of how to assess our society and how we're doing. It's not GDP. As you say, the figures, we're always citing, an increase in GDP and the stock market, and it has nothing to do with an overwhelming majority of the country. I think it's so important that you're doing that because, the income scale is so out of whack that we're valuing CEOs at 3,000x when a society doesn't run unless you have, garbage takers and teachers and healthcare workers and child care workers. So I think reframing that whole dynamic is so critical.
Thank you so much. I love this question because I interpreted this question as like, keep up the good work. Was there a question you want to tack on there? It's up to you. No pressure.
Just a way to confront that beyond the $1,000. Are there ways to try and combat the inequalities?
Oh yeah, I love this. Thank you for the question. I guess I'll hop up and go up here so that people can see. So, how many of you run a business or organization or a club? And so imagine if you have the wrong measurements for that organization or business. Imagine how it does over time. That's where we are as a country. You have the certain measurements and you're like, yeah, stock market, GDP. And then people are like, why are we heading the wrong direction, like everyone I know? So if you'd see that we're in a civic engagement depression where like people volunteering have record lows. And it's very, very powerful when you actually have the numbers in place. Because when you have the measurements that show you have problems, then people very naturally gear themselves towards trying to make those problems better. And then at the national level, we can put some additional incentives in place so that if a company, let's say, says, hey, I'm going to try and make the people in my community stronger, healthier, I'm going to tutor kids, and they can show some results, then that company can get something in addition to the tax break that they might get anyway for some sort of philanthropic activity. But having those measurements is such a game changer because right now, if you don't know what the problem is, it's very, very hard to improve. And as soon as you're made aware of the problems, then it's very, very hard to ignore. So getting the measurements in as the baseline is step one, and then applying some of the energy and ingenuity that we're applying to, frankly, other things that are not as important as our own health and well-being will be step two. And there are ways we can do that through tax incentives and grants and other things that will help make the communities stronger, including, of course, this $1,000 a month dividend for everyone, because a lot of that money will go towards local nonprofits and organizations that will naturally be geared towards solving these problems. Sure. Miss, sure. I'm a sucker for someone in the front row. Not a plant. I have no idea what she's going to say.
Well, I'm very happy that you are concerned about the welfare of the young and the differently disabled and the vulnerable. I've never heard a candidate talk about how we treat children in the criminal justice system in America.
So the question, if you didn't hear it, was about the treatment of children in the criminal justice system. And the reason why I winced is because as a parent, you know what that means, that there are so many kids that have fallen through the cracks in the United States. One of the numbers when I was digging through what's going on in this country is that 40% of American children are born to single parents now, which was a much higher percentage than I thought was the case when I was growing up. And I had to triple check that number because I was like, that can't be right. And then I checked it, and that is the number. And so we have many, many kids who are being brought up in very, very adverse environments and circumstances. And as someone who's a parent, I can't imagine trying to do it alone. Like where it's so much work for me and my wife, and we have some other relatives around. Trying to be a single parent just seems unfathomably hard to me. And unfortunately, boys and girls respond differently to having a single parent. So 90% of single parents are moms. Probably not surprising to you all. So when you hear single parent, you think single mom. That's generally who it is. If the single mom has a little girl, then the outcomes tend to be fairly normal because the girl sees the single mom and has a great role model, and the single mom's like a superhero, and things go okay. Not every time, but this is just, you know, a generalization across the data. If a single mom has a little boy, then the little boy tends to struggle because they don't have a male role model, they mature at different rates, so they might struggle academically. And studies have shown that little boys are more sensitive to parental time input than little girls. Girls are just generally more adaptable and sociable and better at school, whereas boys are not. So if you have hundreds of thousands of little boys being brought up by single parents, then the fact that they might wind up in something like our punitive criminal justice system or our foster care system, like, is not that shocking if you look at it society-wide. And our systems don't have the mechanisms in place to provide what those kids need. What those kids are getting instead is they're getting locked away in these environments where they'd be a bit more likely to end up pursuing further antisocial behaviors than being put on a path to success. So as a parent myself, this is heartbreaking, and again, one of my boys has special needs. What I say to folks around the country is that, to me, special needs is the new normal. How many of you all have a special needs child in the family or friend or neighbor or someone in your life? The rates of autism and special needs, the rates are skyrocketing around the country. Like what used to be at only a couple percent now is creeping up into the double digits. And our schools and systems are not designed to help those families. They're not. Like you have a special needs kid who gets brought to that school, the school looks up and says, well, I don't have the staffing necessary, I don't have the requirements necessary. There's an act that says that the federal government is supposed to fund 40% of those teachers and resources in the schools. But it being DC, you're laughing because you know what happens next.
I'm a teacher. No.
Yeah, they don't. So they fund 15% instead of 40%, and so then the communities are left fending for themselves. And I've already pledged as president, I will go up to 100%. I will take it off the backs of the communities. Because to me this is a national society-wide problem. This is not something that families should have to deal with alone.
But we treat children, young children in school are treated as criminals for misbehavior because of their immaturity. Young children who commit serious crimes, I'm talking about 11, 12, 13-year-olds, are accused, tried, sentenced, housed as adults. I think that's really shameful. That's what I want to know, why we don't address that, why we don't change our rules that allow us an in-between between the juvenile system and the adult system. Those children should not be in the adult system, no matter how heinous their crime.
So if you can't hear the back, she's saying that an underage person should not be treated as an adult criminal regardless of their action, and I could not agree more. And I will change it so that they are not put in with adults in prison and are treated, as you're saying, in the separate category. Then the other part of her question was that kids in school who misbehave end up getting separated from other kids because the schools tend to not have the resources available. There's so many things I want to do for our kids in schools. Number one, we need to pay teachers more. And that's not a feel-good thing. The data clearly shows that a good teacher is worth his or her weight in gold in terms of improved educational outcomes over the range of kids. So that's easy. Number two, we should have more teachers in the classrooms because the data also shows that having more teachers on a per-student basis is very positive. Number three, we should lighten up on the standardized tests. Did you know, no one knows this is very dark. Did you know that we invented the SAT during World War II as a means to identify which kids not to send to the front lines? And now we treat our kids like every year is wartime. Does that make sense to anybody? So we should lighten up on the standardized tests and let our teachers do their jobs, because like the teachers know that they're doing things that aren't right for their kids in the classroom because they have to teach to the standardized test all the time. And the last thing is that we have to, well, not, there are two more things. The fourth thing is that we have to stop pretending that college is for everyone. It's not. And so we should be investing in technical, vocational, and trade programs at the high school level and putting tons of resources to work for kids who want to do something aside from go to college. Only 6% of American high school students are in technical or trade programs. In Germany, that's 59%. Think about that gulf. So we need to do much more for kids who want to pursue something aside from college. And the last thing is, how many of you all are educators? Since they're always teachers. I love teachers. Good teacher, again. I have kids, public school, like, good teacher is a lifesaver, a lifeblood of the community. But if you're a teacher, you know that you can control approximately 35% of that kid's educational outcome, and the other 65% is happening outside of school. That's parental time spent with a kid, income, stress levels in the household, words read to them before they even showed up to school on day one. These are the variables that control 65% of our kids' progress. And so educators are being put in an impossible position where we're like, educate them, and you're like, I can control approximately a third. So what we have to do is we have to work on the other 2/3 by putting resources into the home and the family. So do you think putting $1,000 a month into a household would lower the stress level, maybe make it so that someone has more time to spend with their kid? You put resources into the families and homes, you give our kids a much better chance to learn and the teachers a much better chance to teach. And that is what we can all make happen right now in 2020.
Yeah.
I have two more questions, they tell me. Miss, with the nice scarf, yeah.
Okay. So being an African American woman, I have a deep fear of mass incarceration. I've personally seen it affect my family, families that are like mine. So I haven't really seen you address it tonight. How would you plan on changing the prison system to make it more equal and better?
It is terrible what we have allowed to happen in terms of our system of mass incarceration. And I was about to apologize to you on behalf of the country, even though I had absolutely nothing to do with it, because it's deeply wrong, and we all are seeing that more and more. So the things I would do, first off, number one, I would get rid of private prisons altogether. It makes no sense to have prisons that run on a profit motive. I mean, that means they literally profit from recidivism or shoddy treatment of inmates. Number two, we have to change the mandatory minimum sentencing and lighten up on the war on drugs that ends up criminalizing people who are struggling with addiction. So at the top line, I would legalize marijuana at a federal level. And then I would pardon everyone who's in jail for a non-violent marijuana-related offense. It's like, why are we always pardoning these rich weirdos that are walking out? I'd much rather pardon people no one has ever heard of who shouldn't have been in prison in the first place. And then we need to try and make our prisons genuinely rehabilitative. But instead of saying, look, we're just going to separate these people, and then, I mean, there's that story with Bloomberg, it's like, hiring prison labor. But we need to actually try and create pathways back into the workforce and society for people who are in prison. And I will say this, $1,000 a month is going to go very far, because I've talked to people who are coming out of prison, and they say that employers don't want to give them a shot, because if they have a choice, they'll be like, well, the person without the conviction or the record of incarceration will always win. And so the options that people feel like they have when they come out are limited. That at least if you have $1,000 a month waiting for you, then people will be a little happier to see you when you come out and you have some time to figure it out. And so those are some of the steps I would take, but I'm happy to say that there is a national consensus that we are overly punitive when it comes to our criminal justice system, and we need to move in a very, very different, more human direction. Thank you, Randy. One more, is that right?
A question on climate, right here, we have a proposed pipeline between Portsmouth and Manchester to carry fracked natural gas with a liquid natural gas tank to be placed in Epping. You went to school in Exeter, you know the geography, the most populated area in our state. Would you oppose that fossil fuel? It's a local ground zero for us on climate to stop that gas pipeline. Would you support us in that, please?
Let me talk about climate change more broadly, then I'll talk about it specifically. How many of you are concerned about climate change? Wow. Now, that means that you're smart. As climate change is now bearing down on us, and it's here already. When I was in Portsmouth, there were buildings and homes that were flooding more regularly than they had before. A multi-million-dollar shrimping business had gone to zero because the water had warmed and the shrimp had died. So we need to take big moves to protect ourselves and our communities from climate change. It's very frustrating to me when politicians talk about climate change as something to prevent. It's like we're already on the curve. People are already having their lives and homes destroyed by it. So again, are we going to leave people on their own, or are we going to say, look, this is a national scale problem and we're going to put the resources to work right now? We can actually save ourselves money if we start investing in making our communities more resilient, because it's cheaper to protect a community than it is to rebuild it after it's been flooded. Now, in that context, what do we do with fossil fuels versus renewable source of energy? We should stop subsidizing fossil fuels immediately. They're long overdue. They'll make money anyway for at least a while, so we should take the tens of billions that we're putting to work on the fossil fuel companies and move them immediately to wind and solar. And I know this is somewhat controversial, but I believe nuclear energy should be part of the solution too. Other countries have had success with nuclear, and the next generation nuclear reactors have many advantages that the older ones did not. So in this context, if there's a natural gas pipeline, I am not a fan of fracking. I have seen some of the after effects of fracking in communities. And if a community says they don't want a pipeline going through the middle of it, then there should not be a pipeline going through the middle of your communities.
Any more fossil fuel infrastructure built that is not absolutely necessary?
Again, I would remove all fossil fuel subsidies, and I would not allow new infrastructure built on federal lands. So I'm not a fan of building new pipelines. I don't think that's the solution for the future.
Please oppose this that's right here for us. You'll get a lot of votes. You'll get a lot of votes if you oppose it. I like that.
But I want to move us forward on climate change in the biggest way possible. I also want to be honest that the United States of America is only 15% of global emissions. So even if we were to do everything right, the Earth is probably going to continue to warm. We need to try and export renewable technologies to other countries, but even then we're on the curve, and we need to start protecting ourselves. Saying we're going to prevent it, to me, is after the fact at this point. We need to get more realistic and hard-nosed, and know that by investing this money, we're saving ourselves money and we're saving lives.
Let's give it up. All right. Who here would like a selfie with Andrew? All right, listen up. Here's how we're going to do it. To my right, your left if you're looking at me. Line up over here. In a few minutes, Andrew will be doing that towards this corner. You see the line queuing right now? Andrew's going to do a quick interview, a little bit of business, a few minutes. Be patient, line up, we will take care of it. Happy New Year. Tell your friends we will be back before the primary on February 11th. Thank you very much.
All right, you done? You don't want a selfie?
What's up, stream? Matt here from the Zach and Matt Show. We'll be streaming until Yang leaves, in case you're wondering. So if you want to watch his selfie line, which will probably take a while, you can stay and watch. Oh, sorry. Say that one more time.
It seems like it would be pretty rare to get to spend New Year's with one of the candidates, especially one that you really like. So that must have been really special.
Yeah, it's a very unique experience. Like I've never really followed around like candidates before until Andrew Yang, so it's pretty cool that he does cool stuff like this, where he'll actually spend New Year's Eve with the supporters. I'm not really sure what the other candidates were doing.
I think Bennett did that too, but he has very little following. I think this was one of the largest turnouts I've seen. I think at the well, no, I shouldn't say that necessarily. It's a different layout, but he had a great crowd tonight, I guess is the best way to put it.
Yeah, this was a packed house, and then he even had an event yesterday where they were only expecting about 60 people to show
and
up.
he had to go outside or something?
Then it was over 100. Yeah,
That's great.
They ended up having to move outside.
What do you think? Do you want to? What do you think was the what has changed things? Do you think for him to get these bigger crowds?
I think there's two factors. The debate. I think he had a really good debate. It seemed like I think a lot of the candidates up on the stage, they were kind of just eating themselves alive, while Andrew just stayed focused, like doesn't attack the other candidates, tries to answer the questions as best as possible, and then also they had like the 16.5 million fundraising number this morning.
Exactly. And
so
then,
that's powered a lot of ad campaigns both here and in Iowa. So
Right. What was it that brought you to Yang in the first place? What was your interest?
So the guy I run the channel with, Zach, he watched Andrew on Joe Rogan back in February.
Yes, exactly.
And he had been looking for a candidate who would support UBI for a long time.
Right.
So pretty much within like 5 minutes of the interview, he was like, oh, Yang's my guy.
Right.
But me, it took like a little bit longer to come around because I kind of lean a little bit more towards the right side of the aisle traditionally. But then like over time, just hearing him speak more and more, I realized how beneficial universal basic income would be to so many different people.
Right.
So, and then just the one thing that I really liked about him was a lot of candidates, they talk about Trump so much. And whether like you love Trump or hate Trump, it gets kind of tired like in a Democratic primary. Yeah, because I want to hear, the candidates talk about the actual issues and the solutions, which I feel like that's what Andrew does. So.
Yeah, he's so data-driven. I think that's the coolest. I mean, obviously, people really like the idea of the UBI, the $1,000 a month. But I'm so happy to hear him or any of the candidates just be so data driven. Like, hey, here's the stats. Look it up yourself. This is the thing, and
absolutely.
then here's how we can solve that.
Solutions oriented.
Right, exactly.
And I feel like that he's open to any idea as long as it's going to actually solve the problems and make things better for everyone, regardless of whether it comes from the left side of the spectrum, the right side, because I think both sides of the political aisle have some good ideas.
Right.
So
Right,
I
we're
think
too divided on
that's
the
why
thing of left and right.
Yeah, his slogan's, not left, not right, just forward.
Right.
And I really like that.
Yeah,
so.
exactly. Yeah, and where does he go? Is he here tomorrow too? Do you know? Do you have more events?
He is. This is his last event during his New Hampshire swing.
Okay.
He'll be heading to Iowa. He has an event there tomorrow night at like 8 p.m.
So do you go to that then?
I won't be there tomorrow, but my plan is to fly in on Saturday. So.
Wow. And is like your show that popular on YouTube that you can afford to do this kind of thing, or?
Yeah, we have like ad revenue and stuff like that,
Right.
and my own like personal circumstances before doing this YouTube thing. I ran my own business.
Oh wow!
So
right.
Luckily I was fortunate enough to be in a position where I could pass that off to my brother.
Oh, awesome!
And he works.
He can still run that.
Yeah, he runs it and allows me to do this, which I'm really thankful and grateful to him for.
Right.
So.
Right. Yeah. It's amazing. I mean, I'm doing it a little differently because I'm New Hampshire based and I stay here, but I get to see all of the candidates and really hear and get the like positives from each one, and because whoever gets the nomination, assumably during the general, they will start to incorporate the different people's ideas. So, I'm not so worried. I shouldn't say that, but whoever whoever the person is who goes for the general, I think they will grab a little bit from everyone, and hopefully they'll grab. If it's not Yang, hopefully they'll grab some of his good pointers, or at least hopefully start to use data more.
Yeah, well, he's already started changing the conversation. Like, so many people are. Ooh. Oh.
New Year's fireworks are over. Wow.
I was to say, I think it was the October debate that CNN put on. So many different candidates, like Julian Castro, Tulsi Gabbard, talked about universal basic income, which had never happened on a debate stage before. So he's already changed the conversation.
Exactly.
He's had a line back in, I think it was August or September, where it was like, I'm either going to win or all the other candidates are going to sound a lot alike.
Right. Yeah, at some of the other events that I've been to where it was not Yang, and I maybe have mentioned, him and stuff, or they've said it all on their own, where they're like, well, they were thinking of voting for someone else, but they were hopeful, they liked some of the things Yang was saying, and were thinking, well, at least let's put him in a position within the government.
I think, I'm a huge Yang supporter, obviously, but I try to, be realistic about his chances. I think there is a path for Yang, but for that to happen, a lot of things are going to have to go right.
Right, exactly. And it's early to tell.
I think if he doesn't win the nomination, I think any of the other candidates would maybe be making a great choice by putting him in their administration.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. He would be a great choice. Oh, well, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
What was the name of your show again?
It is the Zach and Matt Show on YouTube, and you can also find us on Twitter at Zach and Matt Show.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Awesome, man.
What is your...
I'm David Bacon. It's a David Feldman show. If you have a camera and you shoot that, it'll take you right to his website.
Okay.
It's twice a week. It's political. It's comedy too. I record tonight with him, but I already have that. I already have the stuff from the other day, so this will probably be on the next show or something.
Okay,
so,
cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, maybe I'll see you again at some of these events.
Maybe.
Yeah? It's cool. You're live streaming.
Yep.
There's
still 1,000 people watching right now.
Even though it's like the event is over.
Yep.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, like 10 years ago when I was I was first putting up videos, they asked me to do the revenue thing, and I was like, I don't want to do that. And then all it did is now I can't.
Yeah.
I'm just in YouTube hell, so I can't. No one can find me, but whatever.
Right.
And now they changed the whole thing to 4,000. Or whatever it was, it's all based on, it used to be 5,000 views on any video, and then they would ask you to take revenue sharing, and now it's a totally different metric that I can't even get to, but whatever. Good for you, man.
Thanks for the conversation.
Yeah,
Appreciate
thank you, Matt. That was fun.
I did?
Hope you guys enjoyed that interview.
Good.
That's like the third time I've been interviewed before, but the first time for politics.
Good. All right. I was telling him, I had the Ford pocket for Hillary. I had a guy. Yeah. Yeah, seriously, that's like, that's what I bump into from the inside. I mean, it's just like, people are genetically predisposed.
That was the David Feldman show.
Oh yeah. No sleep, just like cooking.
One of my findings, here's what I'm finding. Yeah. You know what I mean? But it's moving the needle. We need to see those polls. We need to see a poll so we can prove it. So I have Nick talking about how they're going to show us stuff. Yep. I asked him why. I was like, oh, yeah. Like, you have to ask that. He was like, so
Well, I was mid-interview, so I didn't really have time to like set up the camera.
I think he'll still ask a stupid question. They were like, are you Iowa? Why are you focusing? And they were like,
Guys, look how many people are still waiting to see Andrew.
basically saying like New Hampshire has to do that. Right. And Iowa and now the committee investing in Iowa. Right. But New Hampshire's like, we want more. Yeah. I mean, I think that's right. Yeah, absolutely. Did Steve talk about that? I hope he's talking about that. Yeah, they are. They are. And I get it. I mean, it's like saying that, you know, there's early investment in Hampshire and then kind of like so yeah. But now that they have money, they're going to back
I wonder how close I can get.
Yeah, let's see. I mean, again, I want to see another poll on Iowa. Last time.
All right. 1 in chat if you want me to move closer. 2 in chat if you like it here. The ones have it.
We have one. Yeah, we got one. We need four. So was it actually? I don't remember what it was. 7 weeks.
Okay.
Impeachment, which changes the impeachment national goal. So, like a clerk act, UNA's actually talked to Andy Smith for a while, and Andy's like, look, 5 years ago it cost $25 grand to do the same poll, and today will cost $50,000. And the Boston Globe used to be their sponsor, and they're no longer the sponsor. So he's like, we're going to do another one. I was like, you're a sport person? He's like, you know, like, you can't say that. But, and then we knew about the January. Go ahead.
No, I just have a quick question.
Sure, yeah, then I got to, yep. I can email it to you. All right, thanks, Dad. Have a good night.
That guy in the red man, he's hanging out. He's really trying to get out of it. He's trying to right there to fight. Was he with them? Just a local guy blogging for some guy from New York. Yeah.
See you again, brother. And well, you've been doing great work. You make us look better every time. And not even that, you are doing a fantastic job. Even if my sister says I don't want to talk to everybody else. Everybody else is busy. Dude, you take care of me, man. Great to see you. Happy New Year. Oh, happy birthday. Mine straight early tomorrow. Oh, yeah. You're the 13th. It's true. Thanks. I'll be in Iowa. It's okay. Take care, guys.
I know you got a tight schedule, but
So do people actually watch this for hours? What do you guys do? You just watch this all the time?
Stop watching my streams and phone bank and text.
That would be better. I don't care what you do as long as you vote.
Yeah, that's the key.
If you come vote in Iowa and New Hampshire, we're good. If you're just gonna like talk about Yang, that only. Yes. All right, cool. I love you. Come on up. Let's do it. McDonald's.
I know. What's up with that? You should let Bernie know. Jump on the wall.
Thank you.
Quick secret, I'm a Republican state representative in Maine. And if you win, I will vote for you over Donald Trump in the general.
Here we go. 1, 2, 3. One more.
I can't upset my grassroots people when I voted to ban conversion therapy on minors, so.
Well, thank you for doing that too.
Thank you.
And truly, I will support you. I appreciate it so much. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, please, could you sign up for Connor and Cheyenne? Anything with like Cheyenne, like Wyoming, and then Connor, so, and then honestly, just for now. Yes. That's perfect, thank you. They're getting married next weekend, so.
I'm very happy to help you buy a gift.
There you go. Thank you. You guys have a great night.
Alright, so how's this work? Okay, great. Thanks for being on Joe Rogan. That's where I heard about you. Yeah, I love that comment.
Is it gonna flash every time I take a look? That's okay. No, it's totally fine. Alright, 1, 4, 1, 2, 3. Okay, got it.
Thanks, man.
This is what I'm doing. That's too. A lot of words now. The job descriptions. This is a part of the solution. If a portion of the profits will go to your campaign, an interlocking block with mechanical hardware that goes through it. You lock into existing seawalls. That's how to build them. They can 1 inch each 20 feet. They can lock in the same with corkscrew anchors, and if you rebuild Hawaii and the response island, if you rebuild them, no, that's good. Alex G, I have his email address, and I'm going to send him a copy of it. You can talk about it. Profits for you guys. Thank you so much. You've got a lot of good ideas.
What was the question?
Thanks for everything. Thank you, bud. We'll chat.
See, you out of here?
I think we're good.
Yeah, Matt's out of here.
Bring it in, man. I hope you got grits with the mill.
Grist for the content. I just read a lot of literary stuff.
We'll chat.
Thanks, man. Happy New Year. Thank you for being here.
Happy New Year.
Yeah.
Thanks, Matt.
Okay, one more. 1, 2, 3. Also, I just wanted to say that I thought your policies on LGBT rights were so cool, and I'd like to see like super specific. So this is like more specifically anti-hate crime and anti-like discrimination legislation. Yes. Yeah, I know, and I think the rates in there are really high, and like trans-juggling of trans youth with trans people is also really hockey, and I think you tie that in, it's going to be super powerful. Just like me. Yeah. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
Hey Nick, I'm Trent Spinner from Politico.
Hey, I'm Zach actually.
Oh,
the other
Zach,
guy.
I'm sorry.
So Nick is our campaign chief.
Oh, okay.
So,
is he here?
No, he's not. He's really So
I
basically,
thought you were Nick, and I was like,
we don't look alike, but basically,
somebody told me you were Nick.
oh, did they? Yeah, I'm glad you're here, man. Thanks for tracing around here.
Who's that?
I'm Zach. Yeah. No. So the title, I'm the campaign manager, Nick's campaign chief. That doesn't mean anything to anybody. The difference are, I basically from the communications and the team on the road, and Nick runs the operation. So we found it. So you call, yeah, his title is campaign chief. He's great. You'll find like half the teams like, it's called Experience Politico, and then the other half is a lot of entrepreneurs and outsiders. Does that help you? What about you? What's your background?
I used to work here as the editor of the largest newspaper here. And then moved to DC looking for a job.
Concord Monitor? What's that thing he's playing? Oh, yeah, very good. I don't know. And then what do you, then you went to DC?
I moved to DC and like, I don't want to spend another day.
And
they're like, we'll give you a job, but first assignment is you gotta go.
So you just joined Politico? Good for you. Were you there when we were down there? Let's call it 3 months ago?
No.
Okay.
I don't think I've been hired.
Yeah. We, so Yang goes to the newsroom and,
To do their like,
yeah, he walks with like the big open Zoom and he goes, and everybody was like working and saw him walk in and was like, he goes, oh my gosh, is that Andrew Yang? And everybody was like, what the heck? Like, one of my favorite. And like,
that's really funny.
Yeah. And like it was funny because like half the staff was like, oh that's sick, and another half was like, yeah, I'll get that.
Like, who is that?
Yeah. We're a lot cooler now. Thanks, Andrew. I can say that almost every day.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
I'll take one. Because we're both like spiffy today. You look good. Yeah, hand. There you go. I'm your FO for the week, by the way. Yeah. Are you? Do I owe you $20? Thanks, guys.
Like your message. I love your can-do attitude. That is what it is. It's an old phone, but it works.
Hey, work.
I hope you. I don't know that I've heard that whole assessment of GDP and how we assess the lifestyle, but hit that message in the fire. Deficits don't matter according to you. I know it is. We can knock it off. Sure.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, man. We almost knocked out the Zach and Matt show. That would have been terrible. Oh, you're right. Sorry. We did it?
Like a summer, like,
Awesome.
politics is if I win, when I win. They don't really change things.
Okay, we can do that. Maybe they can get in. I'm going for 750 well. Woo! Almost gonna hit 750. I took for the federal.
Yes!
Awesome. Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else I can do?
No,
Wins.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We got one more picture. And you want to picture? We got a whole group of.
Hey, look. Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you here. Talking, you must be parched. I was asking Matt, what'd you like? He said he wasn't sure at all. No, they're gonna get There were some people that were frustrated jumped off the stage here.
And I didn't take it easy on me. Where am I going? You're right. To my left or to my right?
Got a cold crew up from VCU.
I tried.
Can I squeeze through here? Here we go. It's this camera.
Okay, this camera.
Watch out.
I can't believe this whole crew came up from VCU.
All right, look this way, everybody. On your phone in just a second. All right, ready? 1, 2, 3. One more. 1, 2, 3. Okay.
Thank you, Dad.
Uh-oh. If you stay, I'll make it happen. Stay.
For the last package, but Donald Trump inside, this would be much scarier. And who replaces him if he wins again? He may look back and be like, well, at least we knew he was going to. So it doesn't have to be that way, but I think Andrew's the guy that can manage it.
I'm lazy.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good. Well, glad you're here. Yeah.
Good to meet you, brother.
Meet you. I'll see you all the time.
I'm sure now we will.
All right. Thanks again. Here you go. Herman. Okay.
Gonna go to one of you.
I have a bigger bottle even, so not like that.
There's a website called blog.forpresident.us that lists all the candidates' schedules.
No, not at all. And I mean, I've been to Canada, but I've also been the operator. And so, like, I am more like that when I've been to Canada. Oh, I know. Right? You know, I'm like, I look at the map and I'm like, and it's true. You know, and you can't, as a candidate, you gotta back off of that and get a higher figure. Some candidates are very.
They're very involved. Down to like.
All right, guys, gotta take it. We gotta hit the road.
Okay.
I make all these. I have a question.
You know how to get me. All right, awesome. Thanks, Trent. All right, we'll see you.
Sure, man. If we are. Okay. If we are. It was a little bit whiter than silver, but it works out. Thank you.
Good one.
Appreciate you.
All right, that's going to be the end of the stream. Thank you, everyone, for watching. We're going to be covering Andrew Yang in Iowa, hopefully on Sunday. It depends how early I can get a flight out to Iowa. But while I have you all here, if you have not yet donated to Andrew Yang through our special referral link, theyanggame.com, that is how we're able to get this up-close access. And for every $5,000 we raise through that link, we're going to be giving away signed merch. And just today, in fact, we had 4 hats signed and 4 books signed, which makes our already super large signed merch collection one of the more larger ones on the planet. Maybe I can ask Steve Martian some questions real quick.
That's the dream. That's the dream.
Yang will be in Iowa tomorrow night. He has an event there tomorrow night at about 8 p.m., I believe. And then he's going to be there the 3rd till the 6th.
Doesn't get you a whole lot closer. You need a little Yang gang that gives energy, right? And it creates a buzz and all that. And then you need mainly new. And all that's what we got. So did you get it? Dream. And that's very big. And that means we need bigger vendors.
And that's good.
What's up? Part of the Zach and Matt show.
Oh, sick. Okay.
Yeah. Nice to meet you. Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
How'd you start this?
Just by chance, really. Ran into Andrew Yang, in the early summer, and next thing I know.
Yep. Yeah. Oh, no, I love that. I love that.
For almost a year now, and I needed something to look forward to in my life, so
That's how I feel. I find it so much fun to follow him around.
Yeah.
And I've traveled to so many new places this year. Like this is my first time in New Hampshire. I got here on Monday.
Okay.
So.
It's your first time up in New Hampshire?
Yep.
Oh, wow.
Yep. Then I was in Iowa, all sorts of places.
Hey, Steve.
Hey, guys. How you doing?
Doing good, doing good.
Good to see ya. Good to see ya.
You've been mastering the delay speech. I saw you in
Practice makes less imperfect.
Steve, can I ask you one question?
Sure.
Any insight on when a new poll might be coming out here in New Hampshire?
I do not have specific insight. I'm not giving you a spin, and I know, and I'm not telling you.
Yeah, no, totally.
I think it is very reasonable to assume that there will be a burst of early state and national polls that you would see between January 4th and January 10th. And I'll say this. By any metric that we can observe, the fundraising, the size of the crowds relative to what we got in the same locations, in some cases like a month ago. I'm not talking 6 months ago, I'm talking like a month ago. The nature, this may be the biggest one, the nature of the audiences that are coming. So if you imagine like a place like Lebanon yesterday, and I realize this is the longest run-on sentence anybody's ever said, but I imagine I put a period in the middle.
Practice is making him perfect.
Right, less imperfect, you got it. In Lebanon 6-8 weeks ago, we got 40 or 50 people, overwhelmingly Yang. Yesterday, Valley News reported 250 people. I asked folks, how many here are Yang Gang? How many are Yang Curious? How many have seen them? How many have never seen them? It's 3/4 or more, just like tonight. And that's what you need. You're either growing or you're shrinking as a presidential campaign as you come down the stretch in these early states. I've been around it for 20 years. And Next week we're going to have him here from the 8th through the 12th, 5 big days, and we are rebooking for bigger venues because our venues were almost always too small. I mean, even this one, it was standing room only, and Rochester's is a tough town to get a big crowd.
Yeah.
It's a relatively big city by New Hampshire standards, but it's a challenging community for a variety of reasons to get what was 200 people. And it gives me confidence when I see 200 in Rochester tonight, that when we go to Peterborough, I believe next Friday night, don't quote me, go online and check in a few days, and we do the Peterborough Town Hall, I think that we can get a really big number. And we got 75 to 100 a couple months ago, which was a nice crowd, but we can get many times that now, I think. So, and it's time to find out. So this gives me lots of confidence this trip that the growth is happening. The only metric that we don't have in our hand that will confirm that everything is going in the direction I believe it is impartial, third-party public polling.
Yep.
It's been 7 weeks almost since an early state public poll has come out, including New Hampshire. And so many things have happened in a positive direction since then, including the fundraising, the paid TV. We've done a ton of paid TV in Iowa and New Hampshire. Increases in staff, thousands and thousands of direct voter contact. I'm talking door knock and telephone and text banking. All of these things, we know what they lead to. They lead to eventually more support.
Mm-hmm.
But and our internal numbers suggest that people are peeling off of others and are becoming very interested in us. So do I think that if we get, particularly in New Hampshire, if we get a couple of early state New Hampshire polls between now and the 10th, do I think it's possible that we could get a couple of 7% out of it? And you don't have to get 4 5s. You can also get 2 7s, 2 7s in early state polling. It's possible, but do I believe that if we get a decent number of polls, national and early state, to come out in the next week and change? Yeah, we could do it. We'll do everything we can, but I think that there's going to be a lot of pressure for folks to poll because so much has happened in the last 7 weeks, and I think we're the best example of a lot of positive change. So we'll bang the drum, and I feel good about it.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, man.
Thanks. Good to see you.
Appreciate everything you do here.
Thank you.
How did you get into this? And then for someone who's interested in like organizing or
Yeah. I'll give you the quick version.
Yeah, the quick steps. I know you're
I met him January 11th. A mutual friend said you should get coffee with this guy. I did in Manchester. We hit it off very quickly.
I mean, outside of the national, like local politics.
Oh, how did I get? Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So I'm a New Hampshire kid. I've always liked politics. I'm a public administrator by training, an MPA. I went to Syracuse. Great program. Audit city, county, and state governments. And then in 2002, I got out of the full-time auditing business and got involved as basically a deputy campaign manager with a comms background, because I had some comms background, for a gubernatorial candidate. He didn't end up winning the whole thing, but generally folks thought I did a really good job. The next year I ran for city council at 29 of my city. I won. 2 years later I ran for mayor of my city at 31 years old, and I won. Fast forward a little bit, I stayed involved in people's campaigns, so I've run congressional, governor, advisor on presidential, you name it. And I've been an elected official, and I've been a policy guy. So then I ran for governor more recently, got a lot of votes, didn't win. We'll try it again sometime. But for now, I'm all in for Andrew. So I hope that ride goes a long time, and I'm gonna be with him as long as he's there.
Cool.
He's great. He's a great guy.
Well, appreciate the work. I've seen you around doing your thing at a couple of events. So
you got it. No, thank you guys. Good to see you.
Good to
all
see
right,
you
we'll
again.
see you. We'll see you very soon.
After he
right?
wins and you're in the administration, you get out, I'm sure you'll be in a prime spot for that governorship.
Right now, I'm focused on February 11th, 2020.
Absolutely.
Baby. Okay.
I'll see you around. All right, guys. Hope you enjoyed the Steve Martian interview. A lot of good info there. We're going to cut the stream here. Thank you for watching the Zach and Matt Show. Hope you enjoyed the video, and we'll see you next time.